Newcastle United Stadium plans look to be taking another step in the right direction. We know that COO at Newcastle United, Brad Miller, has met with supporters at the Fan Advisory Board, and he's basically told them that there's going to be two options which are going to be presented next year, early 2025. So Newcastle United fans are going to know exactly what the options are going forward with the stadium. Now, I know that Brad Miller has already addressed the people at the Stack. He was basically speaking in sort of general terms. He dropped a few hints in that one, but now to see it on a sort of club statement, which is available on the club website, which details all the minutes of the Fan Advisory Board, suggests that, you know, Newcastle are pretty much in a position where they can start to make that announcement and discuss exactly what is on the table. And, you know, it looks like it's pretty much going to be a simple choice of whether to stay at St James's Park or to go. And the other option on the table we know is not going to be anywhere like Gosforth Park. It's going to be somewhere within walking distance, hopefully, of the city. That's what everybody really wants. Or could it be a completely revamped St James's Park? And in the documents that have appeared on the club website, part of it explains that they've been looking into the atmosphere at the current stadium as well, bringing in a company called Vanguardia who deal with sound, who've dealt with the sound at Wembley Stadium, dealt with some big hitters in concerts, people like the Rolling Stones, people like O2 Arena. So Newcastle United fans for a lot of years now have sort of complained about the atmosphere at the stadium in terms of the sound system. I haven't really been on the other side of the stadium during a game for a long time, so I don't know exactly how much you can hear on that side of the ground, but what I do know is that it's extremely loud next to the press box in the build-up to kick-off. I don't know if the balance is exactly how it should be. I've always been one who would say that the atmosphere should be allowed to build, especially in that half an hour up to kick-off, where, you know, we've seen it at other clubs. We've definitely seen it in Europe. We've seen it in places like Dortmund, where they just let the fans take over for half an hour until the teams walk onto the pitch. That would be probably something they could look at moving forward in terms of building atmosphere. But certainly the sound system for those who want to hear music before a game is being looked at, and they are going to consult with supporters again going into the new year. One thing that was made clear by the Fan Advisory Board was Newcastle don't want to follow the likes of Crystal Palace or Wolves with fireworks, which we see on the pitch, which delayed actually Newcastle fans getting into the stadium at Wolves ahead of this year's away game, because they weren't ready and the fans had to wait outside. It was a bit ridiculous, really. But Newcastle do not, or they've been told by their Fan Advisory Board that they don't want that to happen. But definitely, for me, good, positive interaction with the club moving forward. Those two options, you know, what the new stadium is going to look like, where it's going to be, and also where Newcastle currently play now, exactly what can be done. We all await that with a lot of anticipation as fans, and hopefully we're going to hear that in the next few weeks now, because we're right at the end of the year. So Newcastle fans meeting with Brad Miller, Peter Silverstone in there as well. I believe ticketing for home and away games was discussed as well. We'll have a little further look into that. But I thought the main headline from it was the stadium progress. You know, proposals are going to be in front of fans very soon. So let's hope that is going to be a real positive one for the Newcastle United supporters. We've also been down to the press conference today to speak to Eddie Howe, trying to get some context after Crystal Palace. The game, you know, that's gone now. I mean, the disappointment has been there for all to see. I touched on it last night. Newcastle now just have to get ready for Liverpool. Eddie Howe's basically saying today that, you know, we need a ultra professional defensive performance. Newcastle are going to have the A game for this game against Arne Slot's all-conquering Liverpool side. Look a bit like a runaway train at the minute at the top of the Premier League. So it's going to be very difficult. But I think ultimately for Eddie Howe and his team, I said it before, I think a point would be a great result. I hope they can get more than that. I hope that they don't, if they do lose this game, that it's not a sort of morale sapping defeat, which just, you know, raises more questions than answers. The manner of the performance, win, lose or draw, has to be good. tomorrow night at St James's Park. I'm sure the atmosphere will be. I'm sure West Ham was a one-off, that 2-0 defeat. But, let's just try and stay positive for now. Newcastle need to have Isak on the pitch tomorrow, and hopefully they can get that big win at St James's Park. So Eddie Howe has just met the press here at Newcastle United's media centre here at Whitley Park, and going into that game against Liverpool, obviously the confidence isn't high that Newcastle can get a result. Obviously you can't write Newcastle United off in this game. Anything can happen at St James's Park. We've seen that down the years, but I think really for the fans going into this one, I think there's a lot of concern. We've seen a lot of criticism. We've seen a lot of analysis. We've seen a lot of people change the way they felt about how things are going at Newcastle. But I think really, something's got to give in this game, hopefully for Newcastle in a positive way, because the fact that Newcastle didn't have a shot on target against Crystal Palace, I'd like to think that can't happen in 2 consecutive games. I know they're playing it against Liverpool, but by the same token, I asked Eddie Howe in the press conference if he was considering changing things, changing perhaps the way Newcastle approach the game. We've seen previous Newcastle managers not so much park the bus, but playing a defensive mode against a team like Liverpool, who, let's face it, are probably the best team in the world at the moment. They're certainly the best team in Europe, and it's going to be a very difficult occasion for Newcastle at St James's Park. So for me, without being negative, if I got offered a point against Liverpool, then I probably would take that very gratefully and move on to the next fixtures. Eddie Howe doesn't feel that is the right way to look at it. He says he'll always attack, he'll always entertain, he'll try and entertain, he'll stick to attacking principles. We didn't quite see that at Crystal Palace. That's the strange thing about that. But I think for me, Eddie must see this game now as, the chance to reignite the season in many ways. That's the way it's got to be looked at. So, difficult test. Alexander Isak hasn't trained yet, despite declaring himself fit. So he obviously wants to play. Eddie Howe says he'll run the rule over him in training today. They've only got 1 real session to go at this. And for Alexander Isak, he knows he needs to put in a good performance in this game. It hasn't been great for him in recent times. But I think now Newcastle, move on to a critical stage of the season. December is absolutely packed with fixtures. They'll know the fate of the Carabao Cup. But I think for Eddie Howe, he'll see this as an opportunity. I think he's a positive guy, and I think that's what we just witnessed in that press conference. Yes, he's under there is a stress factor to this. There always is as a Newcastle United manager. It's not all positivity sometimes, and certainly now is a very testing time for the manager. And I think really, if Newcastle fans see this one the way I do, then they'll probably see it as an opportunity. As I say, it can reignite the season, get any positive result against Liverpool. So, tough fixture ahead, but I think realistically, Eddie Howe, the takeaway line for it to me is that he will not change. He won't change the way he looks at it. I think that's going to be extremely important moving forward. And yeah, it's going to be an absolutely critical night against Liverpool.